What's happening, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's a little bit of a different video than what I'm going to do today. It's not going to be running through some Sorare lineups or anything like that. Still on Sorare, don't worry though. I'm going to run through sort of the state of the market right now and also some do's and don'ts, because there's a lot of new users obviously coming onto the platform now with the NBA playoffs happening. And just a little refresher for if you're new, if you're old, to just run through some things that I'm noticing and seeing on the Sorare market right now, especially on the NBA side. If you are enjoying the Sorare content that we're pushing out here at the Sorare, it would be more than appreciative if you could hit the subscribe button and like this video if you do learn anything from it. All the don'ts and do's in this video are purely for informational purposes only. None of this information is financial advice. Do your own due diligence and research before buying anything across the platform. Now, as you probably saw from the thumbnail or the title, or however I go with this video, I'm going to run through some do's and don'ts on the market. And in particular, I'm probably going to stick to 3 do's and 3 don'ts and what we're going to go across them. I'll start with the do's, I'll end with the don'ts, and we'll go from there. So number 1 on the do's is to look for long-term plays. Now, you might be thinking you always look for long-term plays. That's why we're playing this game. If you think of it in the future and you believe in sort of the project and how it's going to evolve and grow and so rare, and you're obviously going to be in it for the long term in any case. What I mean is there's been a lot of, I wouldn't say panic, but big sell-off right before the playoffs on cards that necessarily aren't in the playoffs right now, and people have just lost all hope with them. Now, I can understand it for some bit part players and things like that, but it didn't make too much sense to me, and I'll show you why. So I can go through countless examples across the platform on guys that stars on teams and great performers on teams and scorers on teams that aren't in the playoffs. I'll go with Bradley Beal as not the best example, but a key one nonetheless. So if I scroll through here, you can see he bottomed out realistically around sort of the £5 mark. I'm going to talk in fiat currency. If you would rather me talking 0.000 ETH and all this stuff, I can understand that. But for the sake of everyone watching this, I'm going to talk in fiat currency. If you go through this now, he's picked up a little bit. He's at the 7.5 mark in terms of pounds, but he slowly started to tick away over the past month. He was around the £11 mark and then dipped into the 5s. I understand why people are looking to sort of move away from Bradley Beal and cards like of his ilk, because they have no utility for the playoffs. There's no reason to keep him. At the start of the game, Bradley Beal was a £30 to £40 card. He maybe topped out in the 50 quid mark, depending on his L10 at certain game weeks. But there's no doubt Bradley Beal, when he's fit and healthy and the Wizards are properly trying, he's a great scorer. If I just move up myself a little bit so you can see the scores here, he'll consistently get dark greens and he's got capabilities of getting in the 50s. Now, that's not a £5 card, no shape whatsoever. But the issue is people have panicked, not panicked, but they're moving away from the core of the game. Now, I want you to think about when the game first launched in the first year. Now, granted, the pool of cards was very condensed. There wasn't too many great scorers out there, and people like a Bradley Beal maybe then had the warrant of going for £40. I myself bought one at the start of the year, for example. But if you come back to it, the NBA finals are going to finish June 18th, roughly, right? That's the tentative dates that they're slated for, June the 1st to June the 18th. That's roughly when it'll end. It could go longer, although that's the max day it'll go. It could end shorter on a 7-game series. We know that the new NBA season is going to start on October the 24th. So that gives you 128 days between the two of them. Now, ask yourself the question, when the game relaunches, are people like Bradley Beal going to be useful? Yes. Are there going to be more users on the platform? We'd all like to think so, but I do think that there will be a lot more users on Sorare come the second season on NBA. I think this platform is going to continuously grow. I don't see a decline coming anytime soon. So then it comes to the point of when this game's going to come back out, at the start of the regular season, a 29 to 30-year-old Bradley Beal, who was £40 at the start of the year, do you really see him going for £5 to £7? I certainly don't. So my second point on the do side is going to be meticulous on details. Now, what do I mean by that? When you're looking at these longer term plays, you don't just want to go, okay, that's a decent guy from a team that's outside the playoffs. Maybe he's young and maybe he's going to look good in the future for an NBA team. That isn't what necessarily is the crux of it. It's not the be all and end all. You want to look to see if there's an arbitrage that you can take advantage of, is all I'm basically going to say here. Now, the example I've used here is Trendon Watford. I could have gone with Cade Cunningham, although Cade Cunningham is a different breed on the fact of that because he was injured, his supply is a lot more dense than it is sort of across some of the other guys. There's only a certain amount of him out there and his price will fluctuate a lot more when more get pushed onto the market next year through the primary auctions. But in any case, with Trendon Watford, the way that the Blazers are going to move next year, it's rumoured and heavily rumoured that Damian Lillard might be moving away from the Portland Trail Blazers after his lengthy stay there and everything that he's done. It seems that there's sort of an impasse of which Damian Lillard is now trying to win, and the Blazers might be looking to go for a full-on rebuild. And in which case, you could make the argument that it's likely that Damian Lillard would look to leave in the off-season. And in doing so, the Blazers will go for a full rebuild, and you've got to look at some of their young core. I'm not talking Kevin Knox here, but I'm looking at players like Trendon Watford. Now, Trendon Watford on the market, as you can see, there's a couple of him, £18, £20. Right as the playoffs are happening, he dipped in the £7 mark. And again, great time to have picked it up if you had a spare ETH in your wallet. Now, obviously, everything that goes around with this is depending on if you can do it and everything like that. But even at this sort of £18 to £20 mark here, these guys are listing him because they want the liquidity from them. So you can haggle and everything that goes around with it in a respectful manner. But when you're going off of this, you're looking at the long-term advantage, but the details that come around picking up a guy like a Trendon Watford. Now, what do I mean by that?
What do you mean by that?
You can clearly see over the last sort of 10 games that he's had with the team, apart from where he had a few DMPs due to injury and sort of the Blazers really trying to tank, that Trendon Watford even wasn't being rolled out. He got more and more involved sort of as the season progressed, and he had a larger role. Drew Eubanks was sort of deteriorating down in how his performances were going. Trendon Watford was being trusted more and more, especially down the stretching games in fourth quarters. I noticed that Trendon Watford was actually getting picked quite a lot to sort of close games out, whether it be at the 4 or the 5 position. Trendon Watford was a key man in sort of this Blazers, either new rotation or tanking rotation, but he's a young core guy that they're going to probably use next season unless he gets traded away, of course. Now, from that as well, there is another area and something that I don't want to add too much of sort of intangible value onto guys like Trendon Watford, but it's something that I think I shouldn't mention. It basically comes down to Summer League. Now, none of this is mentioned by Sorare, and this is me going on a complete limb, thinking that maybe they might do something around it. Now, obviously, like I mentioned before on point 1, there's 128 days of gaps between the end of the NBA Finals and the start of the regular season. Now, that's a normal sort of period of blanket of time off for majority of sports, a bit longer than we'd get here over in England for sort of the Premier League and European football that we get, and it is football, don't call it anything else. But what we'd have from this is a longer break than normal. I don't really mind it. It's just what the NBA is, and it's what American sports are. But the Summer League is something that happens every year. It's something that the NBA do, and it's something that NBA teams partake in as well. Now, if you go back and look, the Summer League is mainly done for sort of G League two-way contract guys, rookie guys that will get more experience in the run-ups, and also it's used by teams to say, okay, maybe this guy needs fitness and we want to see how he's progressing through an injury. So you might see like Chet Holmgren play some games. You might see the likes of Cade Cunningham play. Sometimes they don't want to risk them as well, which is perfectly normal. But this is an area where sometimes they utilize it just to sort of get a run-up of speed to see how they're progressing and performing and so on and so forth. Players like a Trendon Watford here has also got experience before, obviously last year in the 2022s when the Blazers beat the Knicks in the Summer League. Trendon Watford here, 27 minutes, played for the Blazers. I could see, and you've got Jabari Walkers. There's a few guys that you'd expect to come around again, like Quentin Grimes played, Miles McBride of the Knicks, classic one. Players like this, when the Summer League rolls around, you would suspect they'd get minutes and game time. Now, this is me speculating that Sorare would even do anything with the Summer League, but it's just something to note when factoring in a decision right now to sort of try and take advantage of these lower round L10 guys that are right now being completely overlooked. Now, granted, Trendon Watford has an L10 of 26. That's quite high for what a Trendon Watford realistically can do. But at the start of the season, if he starts coming off the bench a little bit and his L10 dips, these are the sort of cards that will have one of those game weeks where they become really valuable. And if you don't think that they have these game weeks, they do. I can show you the proof. So if we scroll down here, this is the good thing about Sorare. You can see all of the trade data from it months gone by. And you can see 2 months ago, Trendon Watford's was hitting 87s, 70 quid marks because he would have been one of those sort of L10 cheat codes for the week. Because of the way of which the Blazers play and how low his L10 would have got, there will come a week where he just arises and he will be one of the main guys that week to enable you to play certain things and so on and so forth. Now, obviously, again, L10 modes could change next year. We don't know what's going to happen, but you can only go on what the current information that you have is. And I think right now, players like a Trendon Watford and some of these sort of lesser teams that are going to be looking to rebuilding that could also be a part of Summer League might be good little plays to look at for the NBA market right now. And my third and final point in the do section is to take advantage of short-term liquidity needs. Now, again, that's a bit of a mouthful realistically. I'm just saying that there's going to be a lot of managers, or if you want to call them managers on this market here, they're going to be looking to sort of not necessarily dip out, but they want to get some extra liquidity in if they want to have some movement come the end stretch of the NBA finals. And you'll see a little bit of a sell-off happening. Now, as you can see, you've got players here like a Bol Bol. Now, what would it be? An NBA Sorare video about Bol Bol. But if you look at Bol Bol here, you've got a couple of cards here for £3. If you go in with offers of £2.50, anything in around sort of 10 to 15% on what the market price would normally be over the last 3 days is a fair offer. I'm going to get to another point on that on the don't section. But if you look at these sort of cards here, and you can sort of try and take advantage on the short-term liquidity side, if you have spare ETH in your wallet that you're not going to need for the next couple months, there are some really strong options right now on the short, cheaper side and on the sort of more to mid-level range in the market. Now, if you look at a Bol Bol here, £3, if you go around that sort of price range for him, if you look back to 4 months ago when Bol Bol was regularly in the team, and whether he's at the Magic next year or wherever he is, I think Bol Bol will be one of these guys that will jump around a few NBA teams until he finds somewhere that he really fits in the rotation for him, because I don't think there's a doubt that Bol Bol's talented, and maybe the injuries will crop up to him every now and then, but you can see because of how low his L10 is and what he can do on the sort of the defensive end and the offensive end, a player like Bol Bol can easily hit again the £30 marks. Now, again, I know another limited supply is going to come in again, but there's no reason that these cards aren't going to go back up again when the regular season starts and all the hype gets building in and there's that FOMO section. These cards are naturally going to go up again. It just will happen. I'm not telling you to invest. None of it's financial advice, like I've mentioned at the start of this video, but you just look at these prices right now and think about when you arc back to what it was. You can sort of see how when this market comes back again and everyone's jumping in and new users come into the platform, there's going to be a demand for cards that won't have a necessity of auction rates coming out that Sorare are going to do, because they're not, I don't see Sorare flooding the primary auction market again after what happened at the start of the NBA, where we had the big prices, the crash immediately and then a slow retention back. I think they learned their lesson from that, because it did scare quite a lot of people. I remember that when it happened, I was there, everyone was. I can see them slowly, gently sort of piling out a few cards every day. They're not going to pummel the auction house again. I'd be quite surprised if they did it, because it will scare people off again. That's the issue with it. In any case, going back to it in a bit of a manner, if you think about like Bol Bol, cards like this on this end, there's going to be times where he will be a cheat code that week. And at £3 right now, you're getting in at a time where if you think this is going to happen, and personally I do, it's sort of no-brainers to it. Another option on the more expensive end, and someone that I actually pulled the trigger on, was Damian Lillard, because albeit this is what happened when the Blazers fully tanked and he was out, a lot of people would have been in Damian Lillard's for sizable chunks of cash. Now, we're talking Damian Lillard here was a good rare champion MVP at points in the season, good second unit guy. You can scroll down at the start, very expensive, goes in, has the little dip off where he dips under in the 200 mark, and then every now and then he dip back up to the 300 and float in and around there. And then when he was at his real peaks of it, 350s, 400s, that's when he was going mad throughout the season. Now, right now there's a 186 one on the market. I'll go through and I'll show you my exact gallery for it. I picked up a Damian Lillard here in a trade with the infamous Pavel trader. I'm not even showing you, am I? Here we go. I picked up a Damian Lillard. So this is, I'm doing what I'm saying. I'm preaching my own thoughts here. I'm preaching to, I'm acting on everything that I'm saying. So it's not, I'm not just saying this and then not doing any of it. I am going along with it. So I look back and I was like, I took advantage of a situation where Mikal Bridges at the time, I'd won a second one of him. He was going to the playoffs, Damian Lillard wasn't. And you had that arbitrage in pricing that was coming through. When you look through this now, Mikal Bridges £44 on the last sale. If we go on to him, cards, rare, he's at the £50 mark, because people are, again, they wanted him for that short-term period on the NBA playoffs. And then when they no longer need him, they're getting rid of him at the £50 mark. They're trying to take that hit and get out early. Mikal Bridges is going to be an excellent player next year, whether he's on the Nets or as that second or third unit in another team. He's shown that he's not only really strong on the defensive end on the two-way, but he can score. He's a great scorer when needed. So at £50, it makes no sense for him. But regardless of the point, going back to it, if you look at this trade now that I done with Pavel, at the time Dame Lillard's was selling for, there was one here that went for 122. If I scroll up here, 122, way too cheap, because people are not thinking in terms of, they just want to get out and move into another position to try and benefit off it. On this trade now, now, if you look, I paid 70 quid there in ETH. Mikal Bridges is now 50 at 120. Gary Harris is £7, 125. And a Kendrick Nunn at 130. So I'm getting a Damian Lillard here for essentially 130. That at the start of the year, when everything comes back around again, who's not to say that Damian Lillard is going to be floating for double the price? If I'm looking at a 130 paid a 260 mark when he was selling in the 400-500. Now, granted, again, this is the first rate of supply. Sorry, I'll share the screen again. This is the first wave of supply that came on. There was no pre-existing cards on the market for a Damian Lillard, and this is everything that comes of it. At the same point, these guys here, if they've moved in around and things like that, they're going to want to hold them at the start and use them and utilize the utility out of Damian Lillard at the start of next season. They're not going to necessarily just sell them. And I don't think Sorare will flood the market with them. I think they'll have learned their lessons. And even if they put up a 2 or 3 a day, again, the demand for the platform, I feel, is going to be bigger than it was. So it would outweigh the supply factor. That's how I'm seeing it. That's how I'm believing it. Let me know if you don't agree with any of these dues or any like tweaks you'd make to them. This is a general conversation that I want to go across. These are just my thoughts and feelings on Sorare right now. Okay, to kick off the don't part of this video, don't be that guy. When you're sending any offers, don't be the guy. Now, there's going to be a lot of new people coming onto the platform. I understand that. And there is a lot of new people in any case. And if you're watching this video the first day I've made it, the first week I've made it, or 6 months after I've made this, when you're sending an offer, ask yourself the question, how would you react if you received it? That's essentially the mindset I want people to think about when they're clicking the button, because a lot of times it can come across to the other person as maybe that you're trying to scam the person, or you're trying to see if you can get a misclick or anything out of it. But just be sort of respectful when you go across an offer. I would normally say, in terms of if you're doing a sort of card swap, you'd look at around 10 to 15%. And if you're doing pure ETH, you can float around the whole thing. It depends on the person as well. If they have their Discord in their name or in their sort of bio underneath their status mark or anything like that, shoot them a message before and after when you sent the trade, just to see their thoughts if they're going for ETH only, or if they're also going to go for sort of just ETH and cards or card swaps. Because a lot of people are completely different. Sometimes, especially with the secondary market fee on the NBA side, I would normally prefer a swap, because there's normally someone that I would like, and if I'm looking to sell someone and I can get 105% back on a swap, I'll take the deal than that, rather than mess about selling it for pure ETH. But sometimes I might want the pure ETH to move across to football or baseball. It depends on the certain situation. But essentially what I'm getting at is don't be sort of like this guy here, where you'd go across, I'll move up here so you can see it, and he was asking sort of like for 70 quid an M Hard, a DeAndre Ayton, a Caruso and a Gordon, for at the time 2 rookie role players of what this was. Stuff like this doesn't help people. It doesn't get across. It's not beneficial to either person. You're wasting people's times, and it comes across as it's just bad faith is all I'd say. So don't be that guy when you're sending offers. Send a fair one through. Try and talk to the person. If they have a Discord or Twitter in their links, use it into that regard and just work it out from there, because it's just beneficial to everybody. My second point on the don't section, don't chase short L10 plays. Just isn't worth it. Sometimes there is a case where if you have a really, really solid lineup and you're one guy away, and that guy is the sort of cheat code of the week, he's got an L10 of like 8 and he's projecting 35 and he's maybe 8x his normal price. If you really think you can almost podium with the team, then it's worth doing, absolutely. But if you have a team where you're like, they might do all right, they're projecting all right and things like this, and this one cheat code is going to elevate me, it's not always the case. Don't always trust the projections as well. Now, an example I'm going to use is Taurean Prince. Now, he's helped me and burned me in the same season. And what do I mean by that? I think I got a top 8 finish, or no, I think I finished 11th in Rare Champion, playing in the week where he got this 48. Complete fluke. Didn't think at all he'd get a 48. He hit, I think it was 8 threes that night, and had a general all-round good game, limited turnovers and so on and so forth. Did I think he was going to do it? Absolutely not. Was he projecting it? No, he was probably projecting sort of double his L10 at that time, which was around probably 12 to 14. But the more the point I'm saying in terms of now is more beneficial for the playoffs as well than the regular season. The regular season, it still holds some merit, but more for the playoffs, and I'll show you why. As you can see, this price graph is going along steadily, and again, we'll move it into fiat. And as you can see, he's steadily around. If you look at his limited card prices, 2 quid, 3 quid, in and around there, maybe hitting the £4 mark at a certain point, right? Come the playoffs, boom, £18. Now, this is because, again, that particular first week of the playoffs, there was, and again, this is going to happen throughout the entirety of it, there are going to be times where where the lower L10 guys are going to be really hard to find that play in the playoffs. Touring Prince was one of the guys that was targeted for this starting role, decent-ish minutes. But again, and I said this at the time, I think I was on a live before lock on Team Holder, Mike Sakarian. Just because these guys project well and get good minutes in the playoffs, they're not going to see much like usage, like a Touring Prince isn't. So I was like, don't buy the hype of it. I'm not going to do it in the playoffs, especially. And at the £18 mark, it was ludicrous. And I think Rare, what did he hit Rare? 70 quid, right? What did he get? 15, 25? Not worth it whatsoever. Not for a guy that would have had an L10 of like 16 to 18 in any case. You're much better off playing almost a no guy and having 4 stronger players in that regard. That's how I'd see it in any case. But you go across these here, and now you go and look at picking up one, and a limited Touring Prince is, again, 2 to 3 quid. Now, you can look at this at both ways. You can look at it where, all right, he's got this ability, and this is what makes the Sorare market great, that you can get a guy right now for £2.81, and he has the potential to spike like this and go to £18. And if you're looking at it at 3x, he's 6xing your money and so on and so forth. No, not 6xing, 5xing. But if you look at it in this way, don't be the guy that's at the top of this mountain here. Never be that guy, because it's almost rarely does it pay off. Almost rarely. Flip side, he has an unbelievable game, but it's never going to happen on the playoff side. So just the idea here is when you're going for a long-term plan and things like this, don't deviate from it. Don't go for these short L10 plays that are going to cost you an arm and a leg to potentially finish well. There's only a really niche area where something like this is warranted, and it's if you think you're going to podium and you strongly believe it. That's all I'll say. So my third and final point is going to be to not deviate from your long-term strategy again. Don't start selling off at decimal places because you've had a wobble or necessarily thinking this isn't the right move. If you believed it at the start and you think it's necessarily great when you buy these guys, this isn't a game that I necessarily plan on sort of cashing out in 2 months' time. I think Sorare on the NBA side is the best fantasy products that I've seen throughout the NBA from how long I've been watching and covering it, doing it myself and on the Swingman podcast side of things. We've been doing it now for a number of years. This is the best one I've seen. It beats them all by far. The sort of how you connect with it and how you can go along and earn progressive rewards and so on and everything that goes around with Sorare. It's by far and away the best model of it. And what do I mean in terms of deviating from strategy? All the guys that I used to buy when I was building up my rare collection necessarily, I always looked at trying to get people under 25 where I could, apart from MVPs, of course, and go from there. Now, Markel Fultz, I paid like 70 quid for when I first acquired him. Now, right now, he's at the £25 mark. Could I use this money elsewhere? I mean, I've got some ETH in my wallet. Could I use this money elsewhere? He's not going to sell at this 70 quid mark. Like, this is where people have been buying him for. Is probably what it is, and they're trying to relist him for that much. If I sell him at 25 and reinvest that in the football side of things, or whatever I do with it, I'd maybe see a couple of weeks of utility out of the guys, and then I'd want to move back. At the start of a season, do I think Markel Fultz is going to be a good asset? Yes. 24 years old, had a really good year with the Magic. Starting point guard again that will be at the Magic again for it, unless anything comes across in the draft. More my point, he's 24. I'm going to have him for 3 or 4 seasons in my head unless I get a good trade that comes through with him. I don't need to cash him out. Again, this is all depending on your own situation and how you're viewing your gallery and how you play this game. If you're buying these guys at this point, I wouldn't see a need to do it. There will come a week where Markel Fultz will have a really great projection on a 3-game week where he's going to be really valuable to you. And if you then arc back and think, I sold him for 33% of what I bought him for 4 months ago, and you can't remember then what you did with it, it is a little bit disconcerting. The argument to be made against this is that if you did sell him for the £25 now and you didn't have much ETH in your wallet to play about with, and you reinvest it right now at the time when you sell him, and you buy into the market at the same time you sell, there is an argument that you can be progressing the cash that you'd get from him across the market in a more fluid sense to try and take advantage of other areas that you think could go up more. That's the other counterpart to it. But I wouldn't sort of necessarily look to cash out to then not reinvest until the start of the summer. That's would be, if you was going to sell a Fultz now at a 30 or value, take the money and then think, oh, I'm going to play Sorare again when it drops in October for the NBA season, to then buy all these guys back. That's not the move, not at all. I didn't think that video would have gone on for that long, but nonetheless, we got this through. We went through it all. If there's anything that sort of you agreed with or disagreed with, let me know in the comments down below. This is absolutely sort of a constructive video. I want to just understand where people's thoughts are. These are just my thoughts and interpretations of what I've seen going across the market right now. Like I said, if you are enjoying these videos, do consider hitting the subscribe button. It'd help us out massively here on the channel. The latest podcast will be in the description as well, and I'll catch you in our next video, which will probably be a lineup one coming out soon. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.